All right, it's that time. I know you've been waiting patiently. This is a later recording that I do normally. I ran into some technical issues with Windows 11 being complete dog shit. So I got that sorted out and I'm good to go. But this week has been, you guessed it, it's been interesting to say the least. And I'll just sort of explain kind of what you're seeing here, because if you follow my videos, this will all look new to you. And this is sort of like an exterior scene that I'm working on. I don't really have plans to have players be able to walk through here, but it's more like something to be viewed from the starting area, and to sort of like defend the place you're at from zombies. So right now it's a pretty rough block in. Actually, this whole thing is a series of meshes that I've combined into one, and I work on them in Maya now. I was doing a lot more blocking in Unreal, and I still put some geometry down to kind of visualize certain things, but generally it's just so much faster to actually work in a 3D modeling software because there's just so many more tools to take advantage of. But let's see, Unreal. Did I get turned around here? No, it's environment. Modular. Block outline. I think this is it. Yeah. So I basically I put some things around in Unreal, and I just sort of exported all of it and then imported it into Maya, and then do all the editing that I need to do here, and then just kind of throw it back in. And part of the part of the reason why that's so powerful for me, and I guess for anyone, is because you have to change all the geometry, and that's a lot of work. You know, even for like a really simple piece of geometry, it is kind of deceptively um, time consuming. Where did that thing go? Is it this? No. Well, I'm getting all turned around. But I guess the point is that when you have a 3D model, it might look good in the engine at first, but there's like a couple things I have to consider uh, when I'm implementing any type of 3D asset. And number one is, does it have good topology and UV mapping? If it doesn't have good like UV unwrapping in UV space, then it's gonna just look terrible, because you're not just going to be applying materials to it. You're going to be applying light. The engine has this thing called like light mass, and it bakes light and shadow. And if the UVs aren't there, then it can be a problem, and also just the geometry and stuff. But no one's watching this for 3D advice, so let's just kind of talk about Milo. Milo is shaping up to be something that I'm really excited about, believe it or not. And like I think I mentioned in the week before this one, last week or the week before maybe, that that I'm I'm starting to sort of see the tone and the mood of the game sort of come together, and I'm just sort of like letting it go in the direction that it wants to go in. And I am definitely leaning on some really common zombie type of tropes, like a crashed police car and smoke coming out of the hood and dead trees and just this theme of the post-apocalypse and decay. And there is kind of like I do really want this to be, I guess an original game, for lack of a better term. But at the end of the day, I mean, I really want this to be a game that I want to play. And even though I'm going to be inserting kind of like some of my own personal interests, and letting that shape the gameplay, ultimately I do want this to be kind of at its core, a zombie survival experience. And if you know me, if you've watched any of the videos, you probably have heard me talk about Nazi zombies and Resident Evil, and of course other games too that aren't zombie related that are really have really inspired this game, like CS:GO and what else? CS:GO. I'm trying to think what else. GoldenEye. In fact, GoldenEye was pretty much the main motivation for this first-person silenced pistol. There's something just so cool, about the silenced pistol, and I think I kind of fell in love with it when I played GoldenEye. And I really do want to just recapture some of those like really satisfying moments playing games, in my childhood, young adulthood. But yeah, the first person animations are coming along. The first person textures are coming along too. I've spent a great deal of time polishing them and keeping them at a place that they don't feel too sharply divorced from the environment, because this is in sort of a lower poly aesthetic, and it's easy to get carried away when I'm modeling or texturing, and there's times where I'm really tempted to start to go into a higher resolution, because I do really like creating things that are not like hyper realistic, but are sort of I do enjoy making things that are realistic. So it can be sometimes a challenge to pull myself away from certain things and to get a reality check, because at the end of the day, all of the game as a whole it has its own artistic style, its own direction, and I really take it seriously. I don't want to betray what the rest of the game is saying, or telling the player, and to have this other thing where it's like, what, that doesn't belong there. So like when I decided to sort of go into a slightly maybe higher resolution and use things like normal maps that raise the textures off surfaces and apply roughness maps and have a little bit more more complicated master materials. That's when I also had to basically up the resolution of everything else in my game. And that's actually consumed pretty much all of my time in the past 2 weeks, is just all cosmetic for the most part, just cosmetic, making materials. I started working on this landscape, and I wasn't really, let me see, I can take that fog away. No, atmosphere. Oh wait, I know what I can do. That is one fast camera. So I started to sculpt a landscape, and I don't know. I was working with a landscape material, and I just wasn't getting a result that I really liked. I did find a material that I kind of like, and I've been using it, but it didn't really make sense to have to spend too much time on it, because the fog sort of obscures it anyway. So what I wound up doing is basically, let me turn that fog back on. Jesus, that's a fast camera. So what I wound up doing was basically letting it kind of fall into the fog. I think it kind of creates a neat atmosphere. Yeah, so that has consumed a lot of my time. I been working on foliage, and I grabbed this pack of foliage from a free asset on the marketplace, and the same thing happened that pretty much always happens when I grab something for free. Is you basically start to implement it, and then you realize that it's just not going to work as is. Like, it's not that from a technical perspective, like, they're really beautiful, and these are down res. Like, they had many more triangles when I got them. But there was problems with the UVs, and problems with the topology, and I just basically went into Maya and re-topologized the thing and just moved stuff around. But it's still amazing that people offer so many things for free, because it's a really good starting point to to start get something on your canvas. You know what I mean? 3D modeling and sculpting and texturing is just so time consuming, and having people kind of give you a basic block in or a basic shape and give you a chance to visualize how it'll look in your game is a huge time saver. Great way to expedite the process. But again, like that poses its own dangers as well, because if you rely too much on what other people have created, then I think what I've seen tends to happen is that your game starts to look sort of uniform, and if you're kind of plugged into the world, I mean, I've seen a lot of games use textures from websites that I use. There's a high demand for free stuff. People will use it. So it's like you kind of have to ask yourself, like, how badly do you want to have a game that it's like uniquely in your own voice? And sometimes really what that means is that you're just going to have to put in the work. And if you are diving into something you don't know anything about, like I did with programming and all that, you're either going to have to rely on other people's stuff, or kind of just do it yourself. So I sometimes like to just fool myself into thinking that I can just get away with getting something off the internet, and I'll be like, I won't have to learn anything. But what invariably happens is I'm just not happy with the product, and I just go in and I start tinkering, and before you know it, I'm just sort of obsessed with doing it my own way. So what happens next? I mean, there's a lot of things to do, and I've been saying for a while that I want to go back and give these zombies some love, and that's definitely my intention. That is a huge project. Not only do I want to update the animations, I want to update basically recreate the AI framework. The way in which they move, and have blend shapes and additive animations and the whole 9 yards, and just try to make the zombies as interesting and kind of dynamic as possible. I don't have a lot of experience with this side of games, AI and things like that. So I'm excited to learn about it. And my hope is that I wind up with a system that's really satisfying to shoot these guys. They sort of react in interesting ways. Hopefully they'll maybe groan and make sounds that that are interesting too. But I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see what the next few weeks bring. I don't really schedule out things that I'm going to do on a daily basis. I tend to kind of just attack the first thing that I think needs work. And if I feel like I have got a good grasp on a situation and it's starting to become repetitive and there are other things that I could address, and pour my time into, then I'll tend to just put the whatever I'm doing down and move over. And since I've been so heavily preoccupied with the artistic side of this, I imagine that pretty soon I'm going to be knee deep in some code, and going to be looking at shooter game once again. A part of me it doesn't want to go into it and maybe wants to keep it in blueprints, but I think that this will be better for not just the game, but also be better for me in the long run. I don't want to be too narrowly. I don't want to be confined by blueprints, and the truth is that's my comfort zone. That's how I learned to program through their visual scripting language, and I like the very colorful and intuitive. It's just easy to look at, And this is harder. I get things mixed up a lot, and there's a lot of language and syntax and stuff, and I don't have a lot of experience. So part of me wants to forego this and just migrate a lot of the code to a lot of this like logic to blueprints, but I think that it'll be a good thing for me to challenge myself and continue to work in C++ and start migrating the code from shooter game or sort of like adapting it into my game. And it wouldn't be like too insane. I'm really just talking about it's stuff I could get from other games too, I'm sure, but like the reloading mechanic, handling. I need to go back and double check on ammo, how that's being handled exactly. Also, maybe the power-ups, like for example, the cream machine. I might have some power-ups that are sort of inherited from a C++ class, but we'll see. I also spent a lot of time, and I'm pretty happy with the some of these particle effects. I did this metal particle effect, and I spent a long time just kind of getting it to a place I like, because I just wasn't happy with it until I was. And actually, it's not doing the right thing right now. That's odd. It should be making like a metal. Huh. Let's do some detective work here. It should be making kind of like more of a an effect here. Okay, now it's playing, but I only disabled something. Why would it play when I disabled something? Oh, there it is. Oh, well, it must have been a bug. So now we've got a nice, metal impact effect. I love it. It's so satisfying. I've also got some new bullet hole effects, which I'm gonna have to look into some more procedures, or different ways of handling bullet decals, because I think a good way to handle these, instead of like having me shoot the wall and spawn a decal that lasts for 10 seconds and then despawns, I think I'll have like a system where every time you apply the decal, it adds it to an array, or records an array of references or counts them, and then once it reaches a certain threshold, like say like 20, then it'll start to subtract the first item in the array or something like that, and then this will go away. I think the ideal will work. I don't know exactly the step-by-step way I'll do it, but I don't imagine it'll be too hard to do that. I spent a long time looking at lighting again. Lighting is a really complicated thing in Unreal, and doing lighting for real time is it's a very dense subject, and I'm kind of learning some stuff, but every time I think I kind of have a grasp on it, I'm reminded of my lack of experience in one way or another. There's just so many things at play. There's global illumination, there's light bounces, there's different types of light, there's dynamic shadows, there's static shadows. It's like, it really is a mouthful, but man, it's the most fun thing in the world. It really is. There's I can't imagine doing anything else. And things can change in life, but I mean, this is basically what I did when my whole life. When I was a kid, I played video games. Like, that's really what I wanted to do all the time. It's like, and kids are so naive and like fresh, new to the world, that all you want to do is eat Pop-Tarts and eat candy for dinner. But that part of me that just wants to kind of play video games and just disconnect I've never really grown out of that. I don't really play a lot of video games anymore, but I mean, unless you count this. But I mean, this is how I like to spend my time, is just interacting with freaking weird ass 3D models and like video games. Look at this. Look at this guy or gal. I got some really weird behaviors. I feel pretty lucky that we live in an age where I can do this independently, and I don't have to. I don't need like funding. I don't need to have really expensive equipment apart from my computer. Really, I have access to a lot of things, and I can just do this. And also, I think what I feel most grateful for, I guess, is that I could start doing this without having a lot of computer science knowledge. Because I mean, think about, you know, 15 years ago plus, getting into games, like you would have to have someone who was like a programmer to start making something, and there is something kind of cool about having a really collaborative experience, but I really like working alone, and I like having the resources to do all these things myself. Um, and I know Epic Games is like pretty sketchy or whatever. People have different opinions about the company, but I don't know which company isn't evil nowadays. I don't even know. But I'm thrilled that they offer this, and I know there is actually other stuff. I didn't really check out Godot actually. Godot's another game engine. But yeah, we're if I remember correctly, I think this is the fourth month of development, and my goal is to have a kind of a demo that I can send out to friends and stuff at the 6 months mark. And one of the ways I've been preparing for that is by packaging the game. You know, uh, I've been doing that recently just so I can see like how big is it. How is it running? Is there a difference in performance when I actually package the build, or do parts of the game look different, like shadows or whatever? And so far, I've been pretty pleasantly surprised. And I haven't double checked that Steam multiplayer on the Steam subsystem works, but I'm pretty confident that'll be fine. I think it will be a huge relief once I sort of am able to connect to someone else who hosts the game, and when other people can join each other via starting a listen server by starting the game and then inviting your friends to come play with you online through Steam or whatever service or I do. That'll be a big relief because I honestly don't know much about that at all, and I'll do what it takes so that people can play with each other and with ease. It'd be I'm preparing myself for the day when people send me some weird error codes or something like that, and they can't connect to someone, or the game crashes on startup, or they get some weird fatal crash when they do some specific thing in the game. There's gonna be some serious bug fixing, and to be frank, I mean, there's gonna be some frustration, but that's okay. I mean, that's part of the journey. That's why I prepare as much as possible, and I double check as much as possible. I try not to get lazy. I try not to get careless. I don't always succeed, but yeah, I guess what I mean is like when I make a change, I try to test it immediately. I try not to make several changes and then test. So there's a lot of screws that I need to tighten, in the coming weeks. Not just from a technical perspective, but also from like a narrative and like story perspective. I have been saying this for a while, that I need to sort of lock down a specific frame for certain things, like where does this take place, what is happening, why are the zombies here. I'm not saying that what I'm going to come up with is going to be some like really bulletproof, narrative. It's going to be silly, no doubt, but for some reason I just can't force myself to be specific about certain things. And the only explanation that I can give is that I have too many things that I want to do, and I'm afraid that if I like lock it down, then I'll regret it, you know. So what has kind of happened is like during development, there's certain things that I've just arrived at, in a definitive way, and I've stuck with it. Like for example, the first person point of view. Like the game started third person. I was considering doing like a hybrid, first and third person. But once I implemented kind of a simple first person camera, I I just fell in love with it, and I couldn't, and I tried to kind of ignore it, but it just kept calling my name. I'm so glad that I went this route too, because I think it's so much more interesting to be in the first person. It's so much more immediate, um, and there's so much more urgency, and I think it works great for. Of course, it works great for zombie games, and I think it really, especially works really well in the context of my game, because I'm not uh, I'm not a 3D animator. I don't have a lot of training in that area, so dealing with full humanoid animations like that are the character that you control, uh, and having a lot of control in the way those animations are displayed, and what happens in the animations is just that's a huge that would be a huge task, for me and my lack of experience. And you might be thinking, well, the players are going to see other human players and their models. Well, yeah, that's true. They are, but from my point of view, your player character, your playable character, when you're playing it in the third person, the animations in that, um, from that point of view, at least in my opinion, kind of you have to be a little bit more stringent about the way they work, because the player kind of has like a really strong relationship with that specific point of view and that specific character. And if they're moving the controller, or the pressing certain keys or whatever, it's so important that the controls feel good and the animations respond, and it's, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of the way I see it. That's been my experience. I guess that's my opinion about it. So one of my biggest fears for the game is that it doesn't offer something but a wave of zombies that has increasing difficulty and damage or whatever. Like that is the core of the game, but I don't want it to be boring, or lacking depth. For people who want to be, or who are a little bit more hardcore, a little bit more interested in, uh, you know, discovering secrets, or you know, I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say. I guess I want people to be able to pick up the game easily and enjoy it, but I want it to be difficult to master, and I want it to have depth uh, you know, I want it to have interesting things that just give it replayability and not just have this stale, predictable sense of, okay, you do this and then this happens, you know. And I think that's such a fascinating thing that I've never really gotten to think of until now. It seems like, as a person who plays games, I've constantly thought about why I think certain things are fun, and I've been surprised so many times in my life when I've played games that are like I didn't think I would have any interest playing. I didn't ever think I'd get into, and I did. So I'm definitely gonna always be thinking about that, but maybe it's not a good thing to get too obsessive about things like that, because it's also really important to enjoy the process of being creative and enjoying the creative process. And even though I want the game to be fun for other people, and I'm designing it with the player in mind, uh, I I want to have fun making it. you know, and if I just like obsess about stuff like that all the time, it's not going to be fun. It's going to be more torturous than pleasurable, and then I'm not going to want to make games. So maybe that's my motto, for this week, or the next few weeks, is to have fun making this. Enjoy the process, and yeah. Oh, these guys are so close. Yeah, these zombie these zombie textures are so, ooh, they're so hideous. I actually don't mind the green guy, but those that denim skirt that I did in Substance Painters, ugh, it's one of the ugliest things I've ever put on a 3D model. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff ahead. A lot of cool stuff ahead. I guess I'll just finish by saying that this week I will probably start working on zombie pathing, AI, things like that. I know myself well enough that I think I'm going to get a little bit burnt out on doing the art, and dive more into the gameplay. And one of the things I might be doing is working in this new map that will just have a block in, and I might block in the level here, with simple geometries, and then and see if I can kind of really refine the gameplay loop. And then once I have a nice testing map, then I can migrate this to the other one, or I can move assets from, or I'm sorry, instance assets from the other one over here, and start to really, refine this game as a whole. And even with the core gameplay elements sort of defined, and having the art there to a reasonable degree, it still leaves the UI and the the main menu and various options, and certain. I also have some plans for some, like a kind of a unique survey or questionnaire in the beginning of the game when you boot it up, or maybe right before you join a game, that I'll talk about later on in development. But yeah. So yeah, it's been a good week. I'm sorry. I'm just like, I'm so tired. But thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day. Drink lots of water. I love you, and Merry Christmas, Happy birthday, and just go to sleep. All right, toodaloo.